What if I told you that a single top-secret military operation didn't just capture a president, but completely rewrote the rules of global power? Well, according to the source material we're looking at today, that is exactly what happened. This is the story of Operation Absolute Resolve. And it all really comes down to this one central question. How could a raid that lasted less time than it takes to brew a pot of coffee completely flip 80 years of international law on its head? That is exactly what we're here to unpack. Okay, so picture this. Our story kicks off, according to the source, in the middle of a night, January 3rd, 2026. From a private room down in Florida, then President Donald Trump is watching a live feed. But this isn't some Hollywood movie. It's a real-time special forces op. And it's all going down hundreds of miles away in Caracas, Venezuela. The speed and the sheer technological dominance of this thing were frankly overwhelming. It all started with U.S. cyber warfare units hitting a switch and plunging the entire city into a blackout. Total chaos, total confusion. And as Caracas went dark, Delta Force commandos were already coming in hot, flying their helicopters just 100 feet over the ocean to slip under the radar. The result? The leader of a sovereign nation, Nicolás Maduro, was in American custody in less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And get this, the source alleges that President Trump's reaction as he's watching the live capture of a foreign head of state was simply just like watching a TV show. A world-changing event basically framed as primetime entertainment. So how on earth do you justify an action like this on the world stage? Well, the official story that came out of the White House was very, very carefully crafted. Let's dig into how they actually framed it. The language here is absolutely crucial. They didn't call it an invasion. They didn't call it an act of war. Officially, it was designated a law enforcement action. By framing it as an international police matter, the administration was basically trying to sidestep a declaration of war from Congress and any need for UN approval. And what were the supposed crimes that were so bad they warranted this police action? The official indictment against Maduro listed 2 big charges: narco-terrorism and a conspiracy to smuggle drugs directly into the United States. That was the public reason for the entire raid. But does that official story really hold up under scrutiny? Our source material suggests there's a whole lot more going on right beneath the surface, and it paints a very, very different picture. So, the source presents this data as a major reality check. Just look at this chart. The massive bar on the left, that's fentanyl deaths sourced from Mexico and China. Now, look at the tiny bar for Venezuela. According to this data, it's a pretty minor player, which immediately makes you question that whole narco-terrorism justification, doesn't it? And there's more. The source also points out that while, Venezuela's a transit country for cocaine, intelligence suggests the vast majority of that stuff is actually heading for markets in Europe, not the United States. This just undermines the official charge of smuggling drugs into the U.S. even further. Okay, so if the source's data is on the money, and the main motivation here wasn't actually stopping drugs, then what was this unprecedented operation really all about? What was the true objective? And right here, the source points to the alleged grand prize, 303 billion barrels of oil. Venezuela is sitting on the largest proven crude oil reserves on the entire planet. The source highlights that President Trump had previously called the country's nationalization of its oil the greatest theft in history, and argues this operation was really the first step to putting those resources back under the control of American companies. But, controlling oil, that's kind of the long game. The source alleges there was a much more immediate reason for the timing of this raid: the desperate need for a massive, headline-grabbing distraction from a brewing political crisis back home. This table lays out what the source calls the classic wag the dog theory, and the timing is everything. Right before the raid, the Epstein files were unsealed. The source claims Trump's name appeared over 600 times in connection with some extremely serious allegations. So the alleged motive? Launch this massive operation to completely dominate the news cycle and bury a potentially career-ending scandal. So what we're really seeing, according to the source, is that this whole operation wasn't just a one-off thing about Venezuela. No, it was the public debut of a radical new American foreign policy, a whole new set of rules for the rest of the world. And to really get how big of a shift this is, you have to look back at history. The original Monroe Doctrine from way back in 1823, it was defensive. It was a message to European powers: stay out of our hemisphere. But our source has coined a new term for this 2026 policy, the Monroe Doctrine. And its message is the complete opposite. It's offensive. It's not about keeping others out. It's about the U.S. acting as an international police power within the hemisphere. Let's be totally clear about what this means. The source defines the Monroe Doctrine as a policy of unilateral regime change. Period. If any leader in the hemisphere defies U.S. interests, America now claims the right to just remove them, bypassing Congress, bypassing the UN, bypassing all of traditional international law. And the implications of a doctrine like that are just enormous. The source argues this isn't just a regional policy shift. No, this is an event that could unleash chaos and instability across the entire globe. The source basically predicts this terrifying global domino effect. Think about it. If the U.S. can just kidnap a president for their oil, what's to stop China from trying the same thing in Taiwan? Does this give Russia a green light to escalate things in Ukraine? The source also calls it a shock across the bow to any nation trying to move away from the U.S. dollar, and a terrifying squeeze on rising powers like India, who are now caught between superpowers playing by a whole new set of brutal rules. So ultimately, the source's conclusion is incredibly stark. It claims this single action effectively shredded the UN Charter. The document that for 80 years has been the cornerstone of international law, protecting countries from invasion by more powerful ones. The era of a rules-based order, they say, is over. The age of might makes right is back. Which leaves us with this chilling quote, one the source traces all the way back to the ancient Greeks. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. In the New World Order described by our source, is that the only rule that really matters anymore? That's the question we're all left with.